Hello. We've all been really shocked and dismayed by the increase in dog attacks over the last few years. Certainly this last year, the number of fatalities doubled on the year before. And apparently in January alone this year, there have been over 10,000 dog-related incidents reported to the police. 10,000 in January alone. Something has gone very, very wrong. And there's only two possibilities. It's either dogs and they've staged some kind of mutiny and they've just decided enough is enough, or it's us. And I know which of those two I think it is. I read an article recently that suggested that the main reason for this increase in dog aggression has been the use of punishment in training. So I thought about that and I thought, well, can this be the reason? Now, if I think back to when I was a child, and many of you, if you think back, you'll remember a time when pet owners routinely used much higher levels of punishment on dogs. You were told to pin dogs down and alpha roll them. We used choke chains. We yanked them on leads. We hit them with rolled up newspapers just for, not getting off the sofa or whatever. But the thing is, although our parents didn't go to dog training classes, they didn't watch social media on how to train dogs, they used very high, or certainly what by today's standards considered very high levels of punishment, the dogs were much better behaved. Rescues had lots of space. The average age of dogs going into rescue was around 3 years old. They had very specific problems. They behaved better. So I don't see how now, today, when we're using less punishment, that punishment can be the reason. Because otherwise, surely those dogs then would have been much worse because we used punishments that we wouldn't consider using today. So I actually think, although I think there are several factors that play into this increase in aggression, I think the single biggest reason is actually the non-use of punishment in dog training. I think a generation ago, if I think back to when I was a kid and we had a dog, if the dog jumped on the sofa, my dad would go, "Get down." And if the dog didn't understand or didn't get down, my dad would clout him with a rolled up newspaper. Similarly, if he jumped up on our guests, he'd go, "Get down." And if the dog didn't get down, he clouted him with a newspaper. If he tried to take something that wasn't his, he'd be told to drop it. If he didn't drop it, he got clouted with a rolled up newspaper. But the thing was, and I'm sure many of you remember this, by the time those dogs were kind of pubescent, they understood that if they made the wrong choice, they were going to get hit. And of course our parents hit them because they hit us. They hit their own children. Of course they were going to hit the dog, but incidentally, some of you remember that the children were also much better behaved. The reality is we grew up with a certain level of fear, and that fear helped us to make better choices. We understood that there were consequences to making the wrong choices, and that helped us to make better ones. Now, don't get me wrong, and I will say again, before all the crazy people start saying that I'm advocating hitting dogs, I don't hit my dogs. I don't encourage other people to hit their dogs. If you have to be physical in the way you train the dog, there's probably something going wrong. So I'm not advising you to all go out and start rolling up newspapers. I'm simply trying to illustrate a point. And if you think about it logically, I can't think of a single social species that doesn't grow up understanding that there are consequences to making bad choices. We ourselves do it. That's why we have prisons, penal systems, we have fines and all sorts of punishments for making bad choices because it helps you to make good choices. But what we're being encouraged to believe is we should bring this predatory animal into our house, designed to kill stuff. And it, unlike anyone else in our household, should have no negative consequences to making wrong choices. So I hear owners who are told that if the dog gets on the sofa and is growling at you and doesn't get down, go and get some food or a toy and lure it off. Well, just think about that logically. If my dog threatens me and I give him food or toys, we know the simple logic of positive reinforcement says if you give something that the dog will like as a result of carrying out a behavior, that behavior is likely to be repeated. So this cannot be the solution. As soon as you start to offer it something in exchange, you're rewarding that behavior. Therefore, that behavior is likely to happen again. So I just saw it yesterday on something on social media with somebody saying with this aggressive dog, the owner needed to play games with the dog, create some games, because the games will refocus the dog on something. Does anybody genuinely believe that if I have an aggressive dog and I play games with him, there will ever come a point at which he says, well, I so enjoy games now, I don't want to have a go at other dogs, or I don't want to attack people. I just like playing games. Do we honestly believe, if in prisons we just dropped in boxes of Monopoly and Ludo and Connect 4, that the criminals would just come out not wanting to commit crime anymore? They just so enjoyed the games, they don't want to burgle us anymore. I mean, it's insanity. If somebody is telling you this is the way to fix your dog, look back and think, do I see a significant progress in my dog's behavior? And if you do, by all means carry on. But I get contacted all the time by people who've tried this madness and it hasn't worked. What it is we're offering people excuses, because then we don't have to address the elephant in the room, which is the dog's bad behavior. And we haven't got a technique to fix it, so we'll just tell them to play lots of games or just distract the dog. I have clients who are told to, if their dog's aggressive towards other dogs and the dog's coming, just turn and go the other way. And the behaviourist made them pay for this advice, as though the owner couldn't have figured that out themselves. If you've got a dog who's aggressive to visitors, shut him in another room. That'll be £300, please. Like the owner couldn't have worked that out for themselves. I think it's scandalous. So I think until we recognise that dogs, like every other animal on the planet, have to have rewards for good behaviour, we know that encourages good behaviour, but it has to have some negative, non-brutal, non-abusive consequences, and there are some, contrary to what positive-only trainers will tell you. Until we start to say you are not allowed to do that, the number of dog attacks will just continue to increase, and anyone who tells you something else is just trying to be politically correct rather than honest. That's my opinion. Good luck.